I stood up again and looked down the slope to the river. I motioned to the bearers. Below in the gently sloping hillside the group of San warriors were crouched around their fire picking the last few bits of meat off the bones of their Zulu enemy. Each grunted toward the east and blessed the Great Spirit, and the soul of the warrior killed in battle. The mighty Zulu had defended his skin without even thinking of escape. His skull now drained at the top of a thuid staff. The Zulu had killed 3 of the miniature bushmen and given the rest a bloody battle. The Zulu had been my friend. My bearers raised the rifles. I signaled for a volley. The remaining San grabbed their injured bodies or their belongings and disappeared into the bush. No doubt that his family would be very proud of him. My friend's head would soon decorate a San doorway. I wished that I had been there to help prevent my friend's death. We were on the march to the city of Zimbabwe. There many generations ago the largest city next to Alexandria had held political sway over the southern part of the African continent. A distress call had come from the shaman of the Mobutus and it was urgent. I am R.J. Cunningham. My 3 bearers and I headed for the ancient city. 2 others that had been summoned made their way toward the city. Although I had heard of them and knew them to be of good character, we had never met before. They in turn knew that the great white hunter was coming too. The first was a white man who chose to go unnoticed through the jungle. He was the protector of a small village and wore a purple mask. He was known as the ghost who walks or the phantom depending upon who you were and why you were discussing him. The second man was an English aristocrat who chose to live in the deepest jungle and raise his family. He was known as the Lord of the Apes or Tarzan. 2 days later we 3 white men were at the arena in Zimbabwe. Samson, the Mobutu shaman, was speaking in Swahili and we 3 understood his lecture. We were surrounded by tribesmen from all over Africa, who had been called in order to witness the lecture. About 5,000 tribes speaking 1,000 different languages in 22,000 villages across Africa were represented at this meeting. Many of these tribes were sworn enemies, and most hated white men. But we 3 whites had earned much esteem in Africa.
My message is simple: the ecological balance of Africa is threatened. Villages throughout Africa have always had extra people to marry to other villages, to defend the village in battle, and to sell as slaves. There has always been a market for excess men and women. Some king, some army, some country, or other have always needed more flesh to utilize. It had been going on for thousands of years. The population never really growing beyond the capacity of Africa to clothe and feed it. 40 years ago the slave trade dried up, however, and now in this second generation since the worldwide disuse of slaves, many more babies are being born. There are whites settling in some of the most fertile areas. The jungle is being burned wherever it can be. More of the land that the great herds grazed upon is being used for crops. The villagers would just as soon butcher a beast rather than tend it and allow it to flourish. Tribes are beginning to wander afar for food and invade each other at an alarming rate. These have all been mistakes that have occurred in the past, and the result was always the same: overpopulation brought the destruction of the ecology to the brink. There will be mass starvation and death. Or if the warlords got their way, there will be mass murder and violence. The circle of life was already in danger and the laws of the jungle are about to be broken. In the middle of this crisis that will take generations to repair, the cat gods have returned from the sky. We have asked these trusted white men to come here to bargain with the cat gods and resolve this immediate crisis. The ghost who walks will speak.
Why were we chosen to bargain with these gods?
First, you are trusted above all other whiteskins. Second, you choose to live in Africa amongst the villages. Third, you are men of resource and action in the face of danger. And fourth, these cat gods speak in your English language.
English, what are they? A few escaped prisoners dressed in lion skins.
No, actually there was a great gourd that fell from the sky and they came out of its belly and have been living near here for about a moon now. We have watched them and left gifts for them, but they have not left their camp since arriving. Will you bargain for Africa and appease these cat gods?
We three white men stood and came to the center of the arena. After consulting with each other, I spoke, yes. The next morning, we three men were sitting in a half circle in the middle of the path where the gods passed for water. A large black leopard approached, sighted the three men and sat down on his haunches about 30 feet away. He let out a sharp snarl that could be heard quite a distance. A tall olive-skinned woman came up the path. She was fully developed and about 5'8". She wore a thin white gown, and her raven-colored hair hung behind her.
I thought that Darwin would be hard-pressed to explain these gods even though they had appeared throughout Africa's history. I spoke because it had been agreed and I was the most knowledgeable about events outside Africa. Welcome to Africa. May we ask who you are?
I answered, my name is Bastet Drakal, daughter of Vlad Drakal. I am the maid of Bast.
May we ask where you have come from?
I laughed, then lay down and curled into a ball. When I stretched out I was no longer a leopard but was instead a man. I am 6 feet 4 inches, dark-skinned, and very well muscled. I spoke, my name is Bast Horus, I am the leader of the Reapers. We left the United States about 10 weeks ago in a balloon. Caught a favorable wind, and landed here. I spoke, maybe it would be easier to explain ourselves, rather than play 20 questions. Here goes. About 6,000 years ago at the time of the first pharaohs, wizards tried to create blends of people and other higher mammals. These wizards succeeded and created us, a race of immortal beings that could survive beyond the confines of the primate body. Now at one time we spread throughout the world, and became too dominant. There was a food shortage, and many immortals cannibalized each other. There are many ways to kill us, but very few that are permanent. I was drowned in a pool 2,000 years ago, but was revived after about 40 winters. I was beheaded in France during the Revolution, but woke up about 12 pounds thinner. I was partly eaten by a tiger in Burma, then when he rested I ate him. There are thousands of us in the world. And we are all coming to Africa. You see, there is one drawback to being immortal. We must feed on the living mammals of the world in order to stay sane. Madness can be prevented, and madness causes an immortal to turn on himself and commit suicide. We breed with all manner of mammal, but can only create offspring with our own kind. Bastet and I have 305 living children and 2 dead children. I personally prefer the form of the feline. Aesthetically they are more graceful than primates. Bastet prefers the form of the canine. It reminds her of her father. What we require of the Africans is patience. When we had our followers at the Upper Nile, we reaped from their sickly and old. We shall do so again. Africa has always had the best and purest bloodlines. Now, for the next few centuries, we shall feed and rule over it once again.
You are the people of the cat from Old Ekup.
You are the vampires and werewolves of Europe.
You are the ghost stealers of the Mayans and the Wolfen of the Shawnee.
Yes, we are. Do you understand what we will be doing? So many whiteskins are liberal in their interpretation of the human right to life. You are the sheep and we are the reapers. It has been thus since the dawn of history. However, I could probably be persuaded to make a deal.
What kind of deal?
A contest of hand-to-hand combat with you 3 gentlemen. If you can kill me, the reapers will accept tribute rather than hunt at will. Bastet can guarantee it. I will fight each of you one at a time. If I'll win I will eat you. And the other combatants will have to defeat me.
What kind of tribute would be required?
The usual, mammals, sheep, dogs, zebras, warthog. You know, anything that bleeds warm blood. It would be a sacrificial animal of some sort, although I could really do with some human, but if Bast makes a bargain, so be it. This concession will cost the Africans more lives 100 years from now than we would ever take.
Why?
By feeding us, the human population reduces its own food supply, and by us not feeding on them there are more of them to feed, and 100 years from now they will just starve some of their people to death. It always works the same way, it is one of the Creator's laws. But that is of course only if you can kill Bast, and that hasn't been done in years.
Are there any rules in this contest?
Why yes, there are 2 rules, one for me, and one for you. My rule is that I am not allowed to turn into a mist. That is quite easy, but it isn't very sporting. Your rule is that you must void your bowels and bladder before battle. I do so hate feces in my lunch. Now do you all agree?
After looking each other in the eye, I spoke. Yes, I shall be first.
Fine, I do so like fresh human meat. Let us say when the sun is at zenith, in the clearing near the river. The three white men nodded and turned to go. Well, Bastet, what are my chances against these foolish heroes?
If they can kill you, I will remain seal bait for 100 years for each survivor. For every one you eat today, I will give you a child. The worst that they can do is shoot you, and you've survived that. Although you haven't fought in 60 years.
Yes. The hospitals at Richmond and Gettysburg were delicious.
As the sun reached the center of the sky, I joined my two companions at the river. I sent Samton on an errand. He'll be here shortly.
I shall start the fire. I placed a burning torch amongst the pile of brush and the flames began to grow.
Fools, I was buried in the lava at Pompeii, and burned at the stake in Spain. Very painful but not very permanent. Now is the time, ape lord, to meet your god. Tarzan stood up. His whipcord body was dwarfed by me. He stood next to the fire and waited. I looked at him, shook my head and said, "You look small, but I think you are stronger. I will battle you as a griffin." I folded my arms, and let out a roar. Wings unfolded from my back. Lion's fangs grew from my mouth and eagle talons replaced my hands and feet. I strode behind the fire pit and then attacked through the flames directly at Tarzan. My talons dug into his flesh. Tarzan screamed, and the force of the attack sent him into the river. He did not surface for air. I roared, "Not fair, no meat, no blood but this." I licked my human-like hand, suckling the blood from the fingers and licking them clean. Who is next? The ghost who walks rose, and approached the fire.
I screamed FOM in the middle of the river.
You are now aware of my possibilities, Lord of the Monkeys, and I have tasted your blood. Let us continue. With that statement, I assumed the shape of a giant white bear, and bounded into the river. Cunningham threw a parcel to Tarzan. From the parcel, he withdrew a machete knife. I stopped and turned into a jaguar. I leapt at Tarzan, and knocked him into the water. Under the water, Tarzan used the machete to keep my jaws away from him, while trying to stay under longer without breathing. Finally, after several minutes, I weakened and headed for air.
As I prepared to attack, I saw a movement out of the corner of my eye. I reached with the knife and sliced a gash in the belly of Bast. Then ducked as the hungry crocodile attacked the wounded creature, basically gutting the jaguar form. Bast resumed his human form and was further chewed by the croc. I cradled the dying body and dragged it to the riverside.
I believe that he is dead.
Well, let's make sure. I whistled. Samton came into the clearing followed by 20 of the small San. They quickly scurried to the injured reaper and dismembered the body, placed it on the fire until roasted, and then ate every bit including the brain. They beat the bones into powder and tossed them into 4 holes. Then buried them.
Well, I guess that means that I have to live up to my side of the bargain.
No, you and all the other reapers must leave Africa or suffer the same fate.
Okay, but don't ever say that I didn't warn you. I will pass the word. God be with your children's children.
Bast and Bastet danced in the dark. Reapers of silence where shadows embarked. They prowled through the village, long claws unsheathed, harvesting whispers none would believe. Tarzan roared from the jungle's heart. The phantom stirred, his bowstring taut. From griffin to bear, the hunter stood. With Cunningham's blade, they do what they could. Oh, the moon shone cold where the rivers went. Strangers unite. united, their battles to blend against gods who walked with their feline guide, protecting the dawn from the reaper's trial. The wind carried tales of an ancient fight, jackal cries haunting the African night. Tarzan bled neath the banyan tree, he'd not bend to gods wild and free. The night rolled deep, the river turned red, the phantom shot grazed their golden thread, while Cunningham struck an unyielding force, clashing with gods on destiny's course. Oh, the moon shone cold where the rivers went, strangers united, their battles to blend against gods who walked with their feline guide, protecting the dawn from the reaper's heart. The wind carried tales of an ancient fight, strangers united, their battles to blend against gods who walked with their feline guile, protect